exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
Hey, folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio, and thanks for joining me. I want to welcome all new members to the channel as well as first-timers in the chat. If you're listening to me for the first time, please like and subscribe to the channel. Now, I will state that I feel that intelligent, non-human species do reside on planet Earth. I have not recognized any of these alien species living among us, but I do believe that this theory is entirely possible. In the summer of 2008, I started talking to David Eckhart, who is a proclaimed experiencer. He lived in a large home in the wooded area near Pensacola, Florida, that he described as his dream home. The house had a beautiful wood interior with cathedral ceilings and lots of room for his family. Now, David was a successful carpenter and contractor who wanted nothing more than to reap the rewards of years of hard work and to enjoy life. But for some unknown reason, he and his family were chosen to witness a world within our own. In our first conversation, David repeated a story that he had previously told other people, including NUFORC and MUFON investigators. I had heard similar scenarios in the past, but there was something different about David's saga, and it struck a chord with me. Now, over the past 15 years, I have been privy to videos, audios, screen caps, and other evidence that David has provided to me. His incredible story of countless abductions and home invasions by these beings has been presented in several radio interviews. Also, I have uploaded videos and photographs to my blog to gauge the reaction of the paranormal community. Now, overall, the reception has been somewhat mixed, but that was expected. So David put his faith in me, and I did the same with him, and we waited. I had decided not to post further details of David's encounters and evidence to back off to wait and see what happened. Well, because of the research, David's story has been told through multiple media interviews and presented on several television programs. I wrote an entire chapter about David's saga in my book, Alien Disclosure: Experiencers Expose Reality. But David's ordeal is only one of many alien encounters and abduction accounts that have originated on Florida's Gulf Coast. Now, please listen to the following reports and place yourself in the experiencer's shoes and make your assessment as to what happened. But before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box, and the Buy Me a Coffee link is also shown below, so thanks for your consideration. Now, if you're in the chat and you do have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one after the presentation. Now, just a brief history lesson. In the late 1980s, the Gulf Breeze, Florida UFO sightings were a watershed moment in ufology. Prosperous builder contractor Ed Walters was the nexus of the sightings, but he was not the only person to claim an encounter. There is evidence to suggest 200 plus sightings were made in the Gulf Breeze, Pensacola area during the flap. The phenomena continued. There have been many more UFO sightings, entity encounters, and alien abductions in subsequent years. This includes the accounts of another builder contractor from Pensacola named David Eckhart, who moved to Florida Panhandle after growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Very soon after he arrived, David experiences an alien encounter, which is detailed in my book. This encounter occurred around the same time as the Gulf Breeze sightings. I extensively researched and reported on the ordeal that he and his family then began to experience several years later, which continues to this day. Now, a bit about the Waters sightings. On November 11th, 1987, Ed Waters, who lived in the exclusive community of Gulf Breezes, Florida, saw a peculiar light shining through a tall pine tree in his front yard. He could see that the glow was unusual, quite different from any other commonplace planes and helicopters from the nearby Naval Air Station that frequently populated the skies of Gulf Breeze. He stepped outside and saw a bluish gray craft like none he had ever seen before. There was intense quiet, and Ed was intensely frightened. He rushed back and grabbed his old Polaroid camera that was a part of his work gear as a builder, and he took photos. The sightings continued and were shared by his wife and family. Ed's photos were published anonymously in the local weekly newspaper, and the sightings were corroborated by hundreds of residents in the Gulf Breeze area. Residents in the Gulf Breeze area, priests, politicians, judges, policemen, soldiers, ordinary and middle-class citizens. Now, you can read about the Waters experience in their book, The Gulf Breeze Sightings, the most astounding multiple sightings of UFOs in U.S. history. So, I'm going to start off with an account that I actually read a few weeks ago here on the channel. But the reason I'm including it again is because I received an interesting follow-up. A boy and his family are on vacation in Navarre Beach, Florida. While there, he experiences encounters with men in black and later a visitation by alien grays. Now, during my spring break in 1977, my family and 3 other families from the neighborhood I grew up in traveled to Holiday Inn in Navarre Beach. My mother had told me it was a newly opened hotel. It had an indoor pool, arcade, gift shop, deli, small movie theater. For this day, it was a very nice place, and my family went to this hotel 3 times. Now, during our second visit in August of 1977, the film Jaws 2 was being filmed in Navarre, and I even got to see the mechanical jaws stored with other movie equipment and props in the eastern portion of the hotel parking lot. Now, during the spring break vacation around late March of 1977, there was a special showing of the film Bugsy Malone, which only children were permitted to attend. It was during the film that I started to feel a bit disoriented. I heard some other children crying, and I heard some throwing up. At one point in the film, I got up from my chair to leave, but I was quickly escorted back to my chair by an usher in a black suit and black hat. I saw 1 or maybe 2 more men in black suits at the back of the theater. Now, after the film was over, I felt just fine, and I never complained to anyone about the experience. So one evening on this vacation, I woke and sat up on bed. I looked around the room and could see a group of small figures in a dimly lit room. My brother was asleep to my right, and my parents were asleep in the bed to my left. The feeling I felt was something I had felt before, which I immediately recognized. It was a feeling I only felt when the grays were near. I thought, it's been a while. And to the young boy about to turn 7, it had been over 2 years since my last encounter with the grays. So it had felt like a long time. But then I could not move, and one of the figures moved towards me very fast. And the last thing I recall was his big black eyes very close to my face and a wand-like object being pointed at me. Then there was blackness. The next thing I recall was being in the sand dunes away from the hotel in a circle of children. I must have been one of the youngest because I was the shortest. but my attention was more on the blue object directly over us that had a glowing blue light all around it. The closest thing I've seen to this shade of blue would be that of a blue glow of radiation that I've seen only in photos. Then there was blackness. The next morning was a Saturday, and I was watching cartoons. It was not till I was watching TV that I recalled that night's experience with the Greys and seeing the blue glowing sphere above me and the other children. I then told one of the other children who was traveling with us on this trip about my experience that night, and she didn't believe me. I also recall walking around the hotel later that day and then getting up the nerve to tell my older brother, who also teased me. Now, this past week, I received an update to this account from another experiencer who was also at the location during the same time as the previous experiencer. Now, she stated to me, I just read your blog about a young boy on vacation in Navarro Beach, Florida during the Jaws 2 filming in 1977. I was also there. I was also in the movie theater, but was blank after the door shut. I also had missing time. I cannot remember anything. I'm 61 years old. It still disturbs me to even think about where I could have been while my parents searched the Holiday Inn looking for me. Hours later, I was found in the dunes and couldn't recall where I'd been. I have considered hypnotism, but maybe I don't really want to know. I just thought I'd share that with you. I've never seen any other post about that period or event except for that man's version, and her name was Lisa. And Lisa told me after I got a hold of her that she was desperately seeking information from other experiencers who had been there that day. And I'm hoping that others will come forward. Now, Naples is located within the area of Southwest Florida, and that's well known for UFO and alien-related activity and encounters. The next 4 accounts occurred in Naples. Now, this first account I read a while back, but I am going to read it for context. A reader by the name of T-Bear recalls the description of a very unusual incident witnessed by his mother and several of his family members. I was unable to recover additional information regarding the episode. If anyone has knowledge, I hope they come forward. My mother and her family were working in Naples, Florida in the late 1950s. One day workers saw something crash nearby. A plane? All the workers ran to the site to search for survivors. The aircraft was sticking out of the sea near the beach. When the rescue got there, they realized it wasn't a plane, but some type of spacecraft. The ship had no doors or windows that could be seen. And beside the ship, there was one of the pilots. The pilot was still in his bizarre spacesuit. He was tall and very skinny, but had a very large helmet. The helmet didn't have a shield, but a robotic-looking faceplate. 2 of the workers picked it up and said it had a little bit of weight to it. Now this being appeared to be dead. Others found a second suit. The suit was empty. It was lying in a nearby grass. Still, others tried to get onto the ship to look for any more survivors. Then suddenly an Army helicopter appeared, and the Army came in great numbers to secure the location. Troops surrounded the workers' camp and forced them to stay. Now, they were there for 2 days afterwards. The military told the workers that no one would believe them if they told them what had transpired. Who would believe hobos, drunks, and uneducated Mexicans? The foreman told the workers to do what the military said, and no one would get hurt. Now, while trapped there, my mother observed the whole situation. On one of the 2 days trapped there, she met an unusual person. While sitting waiting for the occupation to be over, a person wearing a large blanket approached her from behind. In a bizarre mechanical voice, the strange individual asked her, Are they looking for me? She turned to see a mechanical face under the blanket. There appeared to be lips moving, but there was a delay of sound coming from them. She realized it was not human and told it yes. She told it to keep away from the military and to look for a chance to escape. There is a happy ending to this story. When the army was still there cleaning up, the hobos found the surviving crew member. They put a hooded coat on it and other clothes to totally cover it up. They poured booze all over it to make it smell like a drunk and helped it since it had trouble walking. Now, when the bus came to pick up a batch of workers, the workers carried it onto the bus. It suddenly spoke with mechanical voice. Are they still looking for me? They told it to shut up and get on the bus. The family left the next day. Those who took the alien were never seen again. Now, near Naples, Florida, a group of 7-foot-tall reptilian humanoids who were very massively built and evil-looking exited a saucer-shaped craft that had landed near a rural home. The witness states, a few years ago, at a family gathering, my brother casually mentioned to my sister and I that his wife had seen a UFO that had scared the crap out of her. When my sister and I approached her, she wouldn't talk about it. So we decided on New Year's Eve to get her nice and buzzed and then try to get the story out of her again. Well, she was more than buzzed when we brought it up, and we could see her face change, becoming upset. She kept at it, trying to coax it out of her until she finally told us the following. My brother and she lived in a very rural part of Naples, Florida, near where my mother's house is. Now, she woke one morning from a nightmare, coincidentally about UFOs, which is why I suspect the whole thing might have been some sort of waking dream. And she went out onto her porch for a cigarette. Outside, parked on the street in front of the house, was a glowing saucer-shaped ship. Coming out of it, dressed in what she described as combat armor and holding weapons. All were a group of 7-foot-tall reptilian humanoids. She said they were very massively built and evil-looking. She started backing away in terror when one of them turned to her. Then in her head, she said it didn't move its mouth. He heard, "Go back inside. We're not here for you." Then the figures crossed the street to the house across from hers. She turned and scampered back into her place and hid, not daring to look outside for a good while. Apparently, her daughter was also involved in this sighting, but this is as much of this story as my sister and I could get out of her. I know this sounds ridiculous, but if you heard her telling it and saw how she sobered up very quickly while doing so, it might creep you out as much as it did to us at the time. Now, at one point, she burst into tears and hysteria, so she asked her to stop and never approach the subject with her again. We've never asked the daughter about it. My brother says he slept through the whole thing. Now, this next incident also happened in Naples, Florida in 1986. And I received this from Albert Rosales. In both experiences, the witness encounters entities that seemed taller than 4 feet. The being that communicated with him seemed 5.5 to perhaps 6 foot tall. He was lying down for a portion of the time being examined. He did not feel afraid at first. He felt soothed, almost comforted. This feeling and our experience was real, and the vehicle that transported the witness was boomerang shaped. He felt really surprised that there wasn't any nose on the being's face. It seemed flat or smooth, round, or the head shape. He remembers asking, "How do you breathe?" Not saying anything, this one taller being pointed to something on its chest. The witness felt as though the being was male and perhaps a teacher. The thing on his chest reminded the witness of how a gas mask would fit or a filter mask. But on this being, there were only the two perfectly round filter pieces, one on each side of the chest area, perhaps a black or dark blue strap. His attention focused on the filter mechanisms, and it kept telling the alien, "You can't breathe like that." And it somehow seemed to communicate, "Yes, I can." Then the witness thought, for these beings, maybe this was their gills, and that they could breathe air or water through these round orifices. There were more than one being. There was more than one being, and they seemed to have these things on or in their chest areas, but the round part protruded outward, maybe an inch or 3 inches, an inch to 3 inches. And they were placed on each side of the midsection of the chest area. Now, the witness wanted to touch the part, but thought about it and decided not to. He then thought that the gill things were some sort of communicator, like it could transfer environmental factors from one condition to another so the being could breathe without the big contraptions attached to its body. Isn't that a strange thing to think? I thought. And I asked the being, "You breathe through these?" He heard it speak, but not from the mouth or lips section, which was there, but did not move when the words were spoken. The mouth had lips, thin, sort of straight across and a little turned up on the edges. And it seemed like the being had two mouths, one where ours would normally be, but one below, perhaps under the chin, because the words sounded deep or low. He thought perhaps the words were coming from some sort of contraption or mouth down below the neck, because he was not moving his lips. Now, again, this was given to me by Albert S. Rosales and was in Katie Grabowski's book, Letters of Love and Light, 4 Decades of UFO Encounters, Experiences, and Sightings, shared by ufologist R. Leo Sprinkle. Now, this next account came from Albert Rosales as well, and it came from his book, UFOs over Florida. Again, this was Naples, Florida, June 17th, 2011. The time was about 10 p.m. The witness had gone to sleep around 10 p.m. in a room with another person sleeping in a bed next to his bed, like sharing a hotel room. When he went to sleep, everything seemed normal. He regained consciousness in what seemed like a hospital room. The first thing he noticed was that he was lying flat on his back on what appeared to be a hospital bed. Now, he immediately assumed he was in a hospital, but then he realized that there was no way possible that it could be in a hospital, so he began to look around. He noticed the walls of the room seemed to be a metallic color. That freaked him out because he knew hospital rooms have bright colors and do not have metal walls. At this point, he went into a defense mode. He began trying to understand his surroundings environment, and the more details he noticed, the more confused and scared he became. He made a quick glance to his right and saw 2 people, and near her feet, another 2. Then, to his left, noticed a person sitting in a chair perpendicular to his hospital bed. His attention was struck by the person on the left in the chair. At this time, he realized he was unable to move, almost like being asleep but awake at the same time. He had mental awareness and could see everything around him. The person to his left was a female human. This he is sure about. He was so frightened that he remembers the woman telling him that it was okay, that it would be over soon. The witness then watches as the woman sticks a needle in his left arm, like how an IV needle is placed, but different. Their technique of placing the needle required no tape or gauze to hold it in place, which he had never seen, and he had been in a hospital before. The needle itself was metal, but its luster was odd. He couldn't remember if it was too dull or too shiny. It was nothing he had seen before, possibly an unknown metal. When he heard the woman telling him that there was nothing to be worried about, he went from defensive mode to panic mode. The last thing he remembers seeing at that point was the person in front of him, one of the people at his feet. It had what seemed to be a wired connecting to an LED flashlight. It was all white, and he could he could see the LED bulbs in the flashlight. He explained that through metal communication, this is the way to decipher something. He thinks it was how they knew how to where he was or how to locate him. It was done for a reason, but he just can't remember exactly why. The flashlight implement was designed so the placement of each bulb could be measured through its complex variations and measurements so that it could be calculated to the individually differentiate people. In essence, to separate them or track them. They literally touched the lights on her right foot. He didn't feel pain or anything. He blacked out after that. He woke up in the same room, but had no idea how much time had passed. No one else was in the metal room. He was alone. Now, near where his feet were, there was a door, same color as the walls. Apparently, he is now able to move, and he walked out that door. He entered a diagonal hallway. On one side, opposite the door, was a solid metal flat wall, maybe 10 feet long from what he could see. He went 10 feet to the right, and he saw a door and opened it. It was the same looking door he just went in. He closed the door and started walking down the hallway in the opposite direction. He passes maybe 10 rooms identical to the one he had just came out of. When he got to what seemed to be a pivoting point in the ship, he imagined the ship was a V shape. There was a giant window, maybe 30 feet tall and 75-foot wide. When he looked out the window, he saw Earth. It was glorious to view. It made him realize that he was not on his own planet. He panicked, and then he saw beings walk by him, not humans. The one he focused on had olive-colored skin, looked wet but dry, maybe like a lizard or snake. The facial features looked like a mixture of Hispanic, African, and Asian combined. The strangest thing about them was that they had what resembled fish gills on the side of their face, where the human cheeks were located. Almost like slicing a person's cheek to look like gills or flaps. The figures must have been 6.5 to 7 feet tall. He asked the being if this was real, and it grabbed his hand. Next thing he knew, he regained consciousness inside his own bathroom. He was staring at the mirror in his bathroom. When he snapped into reality, he realized that he was in shock. He looked where the needle was inserted in his arm, and there was a blood spot or scab. He was feeling very groggy and had a strange feeling that he had been in an ocean the whole day or skiing on a mountain all day. At this point, he also realized it was 6:45 a.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. Almost 9 hours had passed. He felt as if he hadn't slept the whole night. A week later, a spot identical to the shape of the LED lights placed on his foot appeared. According to the witness, he still has a strange mark. Now, in this next account, I'm going to put a photo up here, and it's part of the account. A Lee County, Florida couple parked their car and were stargazing when they observed a multicolored light and somewhat slams on the multicolored light that somehow slams in the ground nearby, followed by a harrowing experience. So the witness states, it was around 10 o'clock p.m. on January 3rd, 2017, and I was riding around in my car with my girlfriend. We live in Lee County, Florida. We saw a lot of stars out in our neighborhood, and we thought it was romantic, so I parked my car to the side of the road, opened the roof window, and stargazed. Then suddenly, he heard an extremely loud bang that sounded like a gunshot, but it came from the sky. My girlfriend and I were startled. Then we looked up into the sky, and that's when things got weird. We saw a multicolored light of some sort, but it was streaking quickly across the sky. The sound got louder, and the situation didn't look too good, so we tried to drive away, and that's when the impact occurred. The shock wave was intense and made my girlfriend, and I bounce probably a few inches off the ground. I asked my girlfriend if she was okay, and she looked like she had seen a ghost while staring at something behind me when I was faced in her direction. I turned around and saw a car-sized, shiny metallic object smoking and stuck into the ground about 3 foot deep. We got out of the car to get a closer look, and it seemed the object had individual little plates shifting and attaching to other plates. I never felt so scared in my life. Then I realized it wasn't a meteor or any type of craft. It looked like technology, but nothing I'd ever seen before. The plates shifted to a kind of star shape, but were still completely visible. My girlfriend screamed in fear when we both saw the entire structure melt into what looked like a black liquid. We ran to the car and I tried to start it, but it wasn't working. It didn't even make a sound. We looked back at the object and it was growing taller, but we didn't hear any noises coming from it. We jumped out of the car and ran as far as we could. We looked back only to see the object solidify into a giant mechanical metal humanoid figure. It turned around and quickly followed us down the road until we found the edge of the forest in our neighborhood. We climbed up a tree and hid there for about 7 to 8 minutes, praying not to die while I was trying to calm myself and my girlfriend down. The giant metallic humanoid stopped looking around, so we both climbed down the tree. I questioned reality that day. I know that this whole affair seems crazy, but it did happen. Now, this is a photograph of this object or humanoid. This is what showed up. I didn't run it through any type of filter or anything, but this is exactly what he sent me. So I don't know what that is. Does it look humanoid to you? I don't know. But that when he took a photograph of it, that's what he got. So, in this next account, a Florida woman describes a day when a tall, odd looking man came into her office. She shook hands with the man and immediately felt a vibrating electrical shock. She knew that he wasn't human. She states, "Hello, Mr. Strickler. I was working as a supervisor in Tampa, Florida, at an international trucking company in the late 1990s. A gentleman was brought into my office and was introduced as the new vice president of the Southeast Division. I can only remember his first name as Joe. He was very tall. I'm guessing 6'6" or taller. My head came up to his shoulder. I was 5'10", and he was very slender. There was no one else in the office at the time, and he walked in and looked around. I noticed that he seemed very pale in color, had white hair, wore a white shirt and a brown necktie, and wore a dark gray suit. I walked over to introduce myself. As I told him my name, I held out my hand to shake hands with him. At first touch, his hand was ice cold, and his fingers were long. And as he grasped my hand, a vibrating electrical shock went from my right hand up to my elbow. We released hands and I glanced up at him. His eyes were dark, and he had a slight smirk on his face. It immediately went through my mind that he knew that I knew he was not human. I just slowly walked away, and he walked back out onto the dock where the freight was. He never spoke a word the whole time. I was shaken by this occurrence, but I never told anyone. This happening bothered me for many months. I never told anyone for almost 20 years, except that one day my husband and I were watching a television program, and the host asked, "Have you ever met an alien being?" Without thinking, I said, "Yep, I shook hands with one." As soon as I said it, I got up and went into the kitchen. I couldn't believe I said it out loud. My husband said, "What? Why didn't you say something?" And I replied, "Because I knew no one would ever believe me." I never told my husband any more about it and never spoke of it again until now. I've always believed in outer space beings since I was a child. The only reason I'm telling you this is that my health is starting to decline, and I feel that I must tell someone. Now, over the years, I've thought of it and how unnerving it was. I'm sorry that I can't remember the exact date or time. I think it happened in late 1990s or early 2000s. I can't remember the time. Can't remember the time of year because they have no weather seasons to speak of in Florida. I just remembered that within the next 3 to 4 months, it was mentioned that Joe abruptly left the company for no specific reason. That's really all I can recall from the encounter, but I suspect that something else had occurred, and I'm just not remembering what it was. I was wondering if you believe regression therapy could help, if you could contact me, and I appreciate it. So I did contact the experiencer, and we did talk a bit about it, and I don't know what she did. She didn't get back to me, but she does believe that she shook hands with an alien being. Now, this next account, two brothers near Tampa, Florida, encounter at different times a pale humanoid that they say was smaller in appearance in the infamous Dover Demon. So you tell me what you think about this. We have seen something like the Dover Demon down in Florida. Now, for those maybe not familiar with the Dover Demon, this is an account about a kind of a pale, small humanoid that was seen up in Massachusetts many years ago. And it was reported, and actually, a book was written about it. It kind of looked like a gray, but it had a much bigger head, and the body was more human-like. But the witnesses, the witnesses at that point, that's all they could really do and give a description of it. But I had also written about the Dover Demon in my book, Mean Humanoids, and compare it to maybe some of what people have been seeing with the crawler humanoids. But anyway, again, they state we have seen something like the Dover Demon down in Florida, on the West Coast in Tampa Bay. Totally different climate, but back then we saw it, and now we live far away. But my brother saw one, and I saw one too, but they weren't the same. But they were near my house there, and I think they lived in the sewers. I came home in my car, and on the way along the road, I caught it in my headlights. It was under the window of the room I was staying in at the time. My headlights hit it, and it looked like a little kind of baby, like pink, white skin, and its arms were like that of a little T-Rex, like pulled in. It was looking away from the headlights. I had kind of a drive up and around, and the way my driveway went, I had to drive around and up closer to get to the door. It was under the window, just like all crouched down and kind of white pink colored. My first reaction was fear. It scared me. I was scared by it. It never hurt me, but I think I caught her off guard because of the way it crouched. It was guarded with its arms up. And to this day, I know what it looked like. It didn't have small arms, but the arms were just pulled in. So about 2 years later, my little brother who lived there at the same place walked out to smoke a cigarette. He said that this little thing that was all hairless and bald was eating the cat food that put out for the cat under the tree, and it looked right at him and had these eyes. He said they were just like all yellow. And he also said it ran up the tree all weird like, and he said it turned around and went right back in. He went right back inside and said it scared him as well. Well, I think the Dover Demon like thing is real, and they have different types, I think, and it may be harmless, and they do scare people because of the way they look. The one I saw under the window was like a baby kind of thing, but not a baby. It just looked that way. Small, little, off-white. It had kind of fat legs. It was semi-seated, and its arms were pulled up, and its head was turned around. And then it turned away. It was so weird. I got into the house very quickly that night. I do remember I hung up darker curtains that I pulled out of my closet. I was so wigged out. Now, my little brother said that the one he saw was slender, just like the Dover Demon one. And it was weird, he said, and quick, and it was eating cat food from a paper plate. He said it was a foot tall and hairless and had yellow eyes, and it was way, way too fast. And it went up a tree. He told me that he got freaked out and went in. He said he came out the smoke and got within 10 foot of this thing before he saw it, and it saw him. And it was bipedal, 2 legs, 2 arms. And he said it ran on the 2 legs. I don't know what the hell they saw. Now, this next account happened in Crystal River, Florida. The date was September 24th, 1995, about 8 o'clock p.m. Now, the witnesses stated that they spotted a classic disc-shaped craft, silvery in color and appearance. About 35 foot wide, surrounded with a slight green glow, except for the very bottom, which had a protruding sphere and a red glow. The craft moved very quickly as it hovered around above a cow, and then it lifted it up into the craft's inner hatch. Now, at this point, the witness became excited of what he was seeing and began to shout and jump up and down, unwittingly attracting the attention of the craft and its occupants. A second later, it was over to the witness, and the beam used on the cow was now on the witness, as both were now paralyzed, but still were able to scream, and they did. The light beam looked like a white laser light. They could see sort of a thick light particles in it. Both then blacked out and awoke later inside the craft. They were on 2 clear tables, 2 feet by 5 feet, and were paralyzed from the neck down. The room was all white and round. It had drawers or square rectangles along every part of the wall, and uniform in appearance, appearing to be man-made like molded plastic. There was a window all around 5 inches or so at the top of the ceiling, which was plain and white. Now, the witnesses do remember the floor, but say 2 4-foot-tall lizard reptile-like beings. And the beings wore a collarless, one-piece silvery foil one-piece suits, flexible in appearance, with a diamond cross pattern like a sun shield for a car. There's a hole for their tails. No shoes, ornaments, or jewelry were evident. One carried a clipboard of sorts in its left hand, about a half-inch thick. One of the beings was very green in color, like a tree snake, smooth and thin. The other was rougher, darker brown, and bigger in muscular build. Both were less than 5 foot tall. The eyes had not slits for pupils, but had a pretty yellow starfish pattern. The iris was surrounded by reddish browns. They did not communicate either verbally or telepathically, but the witnesses could hear them breathe at times. They both had 3-foot-long tails, which did not drag on the ground. The heads were like typical lizards, with pointed snouts, tiny teeth, and no visible hair. As the witnesses were suddenly able to move, he attempted to become aggressive towards them. One of them swung its tail, knocking him down. He then blacked out, and the next memory was being back on the ground, and the UFO and the aliens were gone. Now, I got to ask, are all human abductees casualties of alien science? So, on December 27th of 2012, I received an email from SK describing a possible alien abduction. States, "Hello, Mr. Strickler. I'm giving you permission to publish my incident, but I do not want any personal information disclosed. To begin, I had a strange incident when I was a child living in Sarasota, Florida. I can never explain it, and I did not want my family to know about it. It involved what I believe an abduction by alien beings. I don't remember the specifics other than I went to bed, got up to go to the bathroom, but don't remember returning to my bed. When I woke in the morning, there was an ache in my neck and a small bump at the base of my skull. The pain went away quickly, but the small bump remained. I never told my parents about it, and they never noticed it. Now, this incident occurred 55 years ago. I now live in Pensacola, Florida. My husband and I have lived here for over 40 years and are all well known within the community. My husband owns a business and employs several of the area's residents. We have raised 4 children and are also grandparents. We have been very happy with our life. Now, this past Christmas Eve, I was alone at home during the day. My husband was at work, and some of my children and their families were visiting for the holidays. They had all gone out to visit friends and to do some shopping, so I was the only one at home. So around 1 p.m., I decided to sit down in the club room and watch television. I had been busy all day cooking and doing a few other things, so I decided to take a break. I sat on the sofa and turned on the television with remote control. As I was surfing channels, the television suddenly went off. I just figured I had accidentally turned it off with the remote, but I was unable to turn it back on. I got up and started walking towards the television when everything went blank or black. The next thing I remember is waking up on the sofa. My neck was very sore, and I was laying on the sofa completely nude. My clothes were folded neatly and set on the coffee table. I quickly got dressed and noticed that the television was on and that the time was 2:48 p.m. I went to rub my sore neck and noticed that the small bump that I had 54 years ago was now gone. I went into the bathroom and to look at the back of my neck at a handheld mirror. There was a 2-inch vertical red scar where the small bump had previously been. Today is Thursday, December 27, 2012. My neck no longer hurts and my scar has healed nicely. It's barely noticeable. I have never told my husband about my incident as a child, but yesterday I explained everything to him. He is very open-minded and believes in UFOs and other strange things. I also told my older son about it, and he suggested I contact you. I believe he reads your articles and that you have talked to him in the past. My older son believes that I experienced an abduction. In fact, my husband agrees with him as well. Like I stated earlier, you have my permission to publish if the personal details are removed. I have included my contact information below. Thank you for your time, SK. Well, just 2 years after SK's encounter and out of the blue, I received an email from SK's son. I hadn't remembered all the details from the original email with SK, though I was sure I had posted it. He reminded me of the incident, then stated that SK had suddenly passed away in December 2014. I was able to contact him that same day. He had told me that he had kept close tabs on the Todd Seas incident on the blog. For those familiar with the Todd Seas incident, this was a possible abduction that happened up in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. Butch and I investigated this for many years, and we do believe it was abduction, contrary to what most others have said in the past. He didn't go into detail about SK's death, but did state that the family believes that his mother's experiences contributed to her demise. He then mentioned that she was constantly worried that she would be abducted and thought her family may also be victims at some point. Now, I asked him to keep me posted in case other information came to light. I didn't want to push him on specific details. I feel he thinks I should be told more particulars that he'll offer the information at some point. Now, most experiencers I have talked to do struggle with continued fear and anxiety. It happens a lot. And many are told that they will be monitored or expect more contact later by these alien beings. Now, there's little doubt that these incidents place undue stress and strain on the body and mind. And I ask, is alien science technology resulting in the loss of life? Are experiments and disposal conducted on abductees, as David has described to me in the past? I believe there's more possibility scenarios than ever before. So, folks, if you have questions, please put them up there. I want to thank Robo1776 for his $15 donation, Mortal Clown for her $20 donation, Moon Dogs for the $5 donation, Rubberless for $10 donation, and Real Truth for his $10 donation. He states, I talked to the Walgreens that the lady used to get the famous Sarasota skunk ape pics. They said they didn't know who dropped them off. Huh. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I had a woman in Sarasota, which is near Mayaca State Forest, which is well known for the skunk apes. So I suppose that's what Real Truth is referring to. Okay, let's get to some questions. How far I got to go back, folks? Big crowd night, big crowd. Thank you all for showing up. Okay, I think this is the first one. Short Order Cook asked, what year was the photo report? Was a digital photo of the alien they saw? Oh God. D, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I don't know offhand. I do have it in my records, but I will get back to you on it. I don't know if I had it in there or not. Again, let me check real quick. January 2017. Okay, let's see. She's a photographer, spirit photographer as well, so I know why she's interested in it. Do we have other questions? Okay. Dagnabbit. Are there any other similar versions of the Skinwalker Ranch in this country? There are a lot of hot areas. Not particularly like Skinwalker Ranch, but there are other places. Of course, we have talked about places here in Pennsylvania where there've been alien encounters and some relations to cryptids and such, like Chestnut Ridge and that area. Um, I guess if you're talking about the Skinwalker Ranch and possibility of aliens, there are a lot of different places. Um, but my honest opinion, I don't believe the Skinwalker Ranch is going to be the last place that comes out eventually. Um, that may be the nexus of all this, but eventually, I think there are going to be other places that are going to be looked into. Dino Bravo fan, what do you believe will happen on the 8th, Lon? You're talking about the eclipse. I don't know what's going to happen. As I was stating yesterday, there's been a lot of hubbub with astrology and tarot readers and other diviners about what may happen. I don't know. I've been saying for a long time that I think 2024 is going to be a strange year. Is it because of the eclipse and other incidents? I don't know. But people I've been talking to since the beginning of the year have been saying the same thing, and I think I was on Dave Scott's show the other night, and he said the same thing to me, that he believes something's up. He's getting a feeling too. He's had some weird encounters over the years, so I don't know. I hope nothing happens, but we'll have to wait and see. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Well, anyway, I want to thank you all for coming on tonight and being part of the chat. You know, it's and if you donated, it's really appreciated. Your support's what makes all this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like considered for the radio show or post it on Phantoms and Monsters, please feel free to contact me at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. So until we meet again, I want to again thank you all for showing up, and I will see you all next week. And I guess we'll get through the week with the eclipse, but you'll have to wait and see. Anyway, you all have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon.